all white collar jobs, what we consider traditionally white collar jobs, are
Mm.
at risk. They are, I mean, and that's not to say they'll all disappear.
Welcome to the Data Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. Join me as we explore the inner data nerd inside all of us. Dive into the world of data alongside special guests who not only share their wealth of experience and knowledge, but also unveil what truly makes them data nerds. This podcast is brought to you by Business Intelligence. That's BIZNIS Intelligence. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Business Intelligence to stay up to date with Tableau training and the Data Nerd podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn or stream the Data Nerd podcast across all major podcast platforms. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Shama Hyder. Shama is the founder and CEO of Zen Media, a global marketing and PR agency serving major B2B brands like Chase, Toyota, and Coca-Cola. She launched the company solo in 2009 and scaled it into a multi-million dollar operating in 25 plus countries. She's also a best-selling author, LinkedIn top voice, and a 30 under 30 alum recognized by Forbes, the White House, and the UN. A sought-after speaker on AI, innovation, and the future of work, she's shared the stage with NASA, MasterCard, and Disney. So today on today's episode of the Data Nerd podcast, we will be talking about AI and will AI take our jobs? So Shama brings sharp strategic view on what's ahead and how to stay relevant as AI reshapes our world of work. So Shama, welcome to the Data Nerd podcast.
Thanks for having me, Asar. I love your hat, by the way. I was like, where can I get like a data nerd hat? That's cool.
Very timely because I just got a bunch made. I'll be selling it um, starting next week.
Okay, yeah, I like the merch. Very cool.
Yeah. I'll send you the info. But I'm very excited to have you on. You know, I've been following you for some time, and I've seen your content, and I think you're the perfect person to have on because you know why I like your content? It's because I feel that you speak your mind. Your insights are not sometimes may not be the same as what's out there in the industry. And I think that's refreshing and it's good to hear. So is that, am I, did I get that right? Is that typically like your style?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I suppose it is my style, but without it trying to be my style, because I'm not trying to take a contrarian view. I think just sometimes the way I see things, I don't even realize that it's so different than how other people see it. And then
Yeah.
later I kind of realize I'm like, oh, I see, not everybody. Because I think when you live in your bubble, as we all tend to do, right? You think that you're whatever you see and how you process things is how everybody else sees it. And then I think that's part of growing up and going to the business world and all of that is you realize no, like people, that's not, and it just happens that often the way I look at things is different from common or accepted wisdom.
Mm.
I've just learned to embrace that. I think being an immigrant in this country and moving here when I was 9 from India, like to me, I've always been the odd one out, and I think I've been really, really lucky that I never cared about being the odd one out. I was just like, okay, if some people really, I think it's hard. I think it's hard because people feel like they want to fit in or they,
Mm.
and whatever that gene is, I don't have it. I'm missing the I want to fit in gene or I care. So I don't know. So I share very unapologetically my take on things. I don't even try to convince people that they should share my viewpoint. I often just put it out there as like, this is my lens and here's what I see.
Yeah.
And if it makes sense for some folks, then, awesome.
And yeah, I mean, you're comfortable in your own skin and you wouldn't be where you are today if that wasn't what you did, right? You speak what's on your mind. And here's the thing, you're never gonna get everybody, 100% of the people are not gonna agree with you. And on anything, on any topic, right?
Yeah.
So as long as you believe what you say, I think that's what resonates with people.
I hope so. Yeah, again, I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I think just the way I look at the world can be different sometimes, and I always welcome other viewpoints as well. And that's the other thing is I'm not uh, gosh, I don't believe in a certain gospel. So I've been known to change my mind about certain things. As more, and I think we should all, that is something I think we should all do, is that hold your beliefs lightly, right? So when
Mm,
you have other evidence that you can change and you don't feel so ingrained as like, that's my identity, that's everything. It's like, no, I believe this when I had this information. Now I have more information, so I'm able to. Because if you come from the data world, right? Like,
yes.
I think that's literally that should be like the crowning achievement of all data, and that
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
make, you make you come to conclusions based on the data you have, but those conclusions can and should change as you collect more data, right? So,
Mhm.
like, we know this, like, this very basic stats, like
Yes.
smaller sample size means you're gonna obviously it's not gonna be correct as you would have a bigger sample size, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I can give you an example of where I've changed my mind too, if
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
helpful.
of course. Of course.
Bitcoin.
Yes.
So, when Bitcoin first came out, I was a skeptic because I was like,
Yes.
what inherent value does this have?
Hmm.
What's the biggest, what's the driving factor here? Like, it's not like gold, it's not something you can feel
Right.
and touch and stuff. But of course, as I see our world progress, and I'm like, yeah, but there's so many things that are digital that don't have tangible physical value that we still value. And
Hmm.
add to that how fiat has been dropping, and we're just printing money.
Hmm.
From that, so it was never that I was anti-Bitcoin, but I was definitely more skeptical, and I've come full circle and feel very strongly about it now, and I'm very bullish on it. And so, that's an example where and I guess in most rooms that still puts me in the minority because people don't necessarily see the value in
I
Bitcoin.
think
So
that's changing though, because I think it's being adopted, um, you know, it's being scaled a lot more across traditional financial institutions as well, right?
yeah.
And so I do feel that's changing, but there are still skeptics out there.
I think the
But
majority of people that I talk to don't understand it, and that's fair. So it's just an example where I feel like I'm also still in the minority, but it's an area where starting as a skeptic, I have come full circle and now feel very very differently about it.
well, I mean, so that brings us to this topic, right? And maybe you can draw similar parallels here with AI because there's a lot of skeptics with AI. People and my personal opinion is that people are skeptical of it or maybe not adapting it because they don't know what it is, right? And so let me ask you, and maybe I'll introduce the topic based on some more recent news, and I think you've talked about this as well. Anthropic CEO talked about 50% of entry-level jobs will be replaced due to AI, right? And so, what are your thoughts on, replacing our jobs, or just AI in general, or maybe if you want to talk about that statement that was made as well.
He's being honest, I think, and when he says that, and same with Amazon. Andy just came out and said the same thing and said, hey, we're gonna be making cuts like all these companies. So it's funny because what started like last year and all these companies were saying, oh yeah, yeah, AI, we're not gonna cut jobs because of it, right?
Mm,
And then they were just using other things to hide behind it. So they would say, oh, you would hear things like labor optimization,
mm.
and so, and I've been in the behind the scenes in a lot of these boardrooms and things. So I've been telling people, I'm like, yeah, they're cutting because of AI, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
believe whatever they're telling you. They're just not telling you that we're cutting because of AI, but they're cutting because of AI. Like, bottom line, that's what
That's yeah.
and so then what happened was, I think one company came out and just said, I think it was Intel that said like, yeah, we're cutting because of AI. And then once like corporate had permission to do that, everyone was like, all right, now we can just say the thing out loud. And so, but it took a year. I mean, for a year, I was telling people, I'm like, all these headlines you see of these layoffs and jobs, like these are all AI related. And they're like, oh, but they're not saying that. I'm like, yeah, because they don't know how people are going to react. Like, but now
Yeah.
it's become acceptable and commonplace to say that. So they're just coming out and saying it. Um, here's here's the quiet part out loud.
Mhm.
Is will AI create more jobs? Yes. In the 15 to 20-year realm. 15 years, 20 years from now, we've
You
created
think
new
it'll
jobs
take
in
that
many ways
long? You
to
think it'll,
create like new jobs like that don't exist now. Yeah, like well, so to have to make up for the deficit, right? So
okay.
any new technology, you lose jobs and then
Yeah.
new jobs are created. Just like when automobiles came out, all of a sudden a whole horse industry was disrupted. Like, right, they didn't need people to like care in stables for horses as much, and they didn't need people to ride like all these things that go with the horse stuff like went away,
Yeah.
and you created new jobs, so you could now like train to be a mechanic and all the stuff. So that shift. Um, the thing with AI is in the next 5 years, we see a lot more losses. And so, what I think people don't realize is that you have this gap. So, what happens in that like 10-year, 15-year gap
Hmm.
from when it takes us to create more jobs with AI? And for now, AI is going to take jobs. Um,
Well, okay, but what types of okay, when they made that statement, right, 50% of entry level jobs
mhm,
will
yes.
be gone. So does that mean it's more of the entry level or maybe some of the jobs that are more regimented or manual task oriented that will be replaced? Or are there certain jobs that are safer than others?
The job that's safest right now is being a plumber,
Well,
folding
yeah.
laundry.
Yes.
I mean, these are the things we have a hard
Yeah.
time to get robots to do well, right? So all all white collar jobs, what we consider traditionally white collar jobs, are
Mm,
at risk. They are, I mean that, and that's not to say they'll all disappear. And so I think a couple of things are happening. One is I think if you were listening to this, if you're doing any kind of research right now, it is on you to get really, really good with AI, meaning start playing with it, using it, and the way you're seeing, and it's not Google, so don't just go and be like, hey, what are directions for? Like, that's not, but really use it as a cognitive partner, right? Give it your brief and say, hey, how could I make this stronger for my CEO before I present it? Hey, I'm starting a new job. What are the like 10 things I can do in my first week that would really set me aside? Like, there's just so many ways to use it as this amazing coach consultant. Like, imagine having a best friend that's super smart
yeah.
and always has your back. And why would you not use that power?
Yeah.
So I think that because so I think it's right when people say AI won't take your job, someone using AI will. It's like 50% true. Because if you are in that position where the position still exists and someone who's really good with AI who can now, because so much of this is productivity, right? If I can get 10x more productivity from Susan, who is really good with AI and hence can deliver a lot better
Mm,
compared to Bob, who is very stuck in like how he's always done things. It's a no-brainer. And so I
yeah.
think about like when the computer first came out, people used to put like Microsoft Office on their resumes and things like that. And it's like when we talk about entry level too, the definition of entry level has changed because there was a point in time where entry level didn't require technology skills. Like you didn't have to know the computer. Like you would come into entry level and then, you would learn all this stuff on the job. Well, that's changed a long time ago. Like any entry level job expects you, we're talking professional services, right?
Yeah.
To be able to send email and write things and do these are all things you absolutely need to have. So that's like a big check. But then you're talking about now it's that AI is your baseline. So in many ways, AI is a buzzword and it's not a buzzword. Like, social media was a buzzword, but today it's just part of everything that we do. It didn't go away, but it stopped being as buzzy. I think AI too will just get more and more integrated
Mm.
into our world, and it won't be the way we talk about it now, where it's just like the separate thing.
So I feel like a lot of these statements that are coming out are kind of like they scare people when they hear it. But I look at it and I'm excited about it. It excites me because to your point, I see the productivity gains. I see how it could make me better at doing my job. Um, and I feel like that it still needs to be augmented with some type of human capabilities. Maybe you need less humans, to your point, but the way I see it is you're going to have humans who manage a team of AI agents. And so you'll be like an individual contributor manager managing these agents rather than having 10 humans, you'll have 10 agents that you're managing.
Yeah, possibly. That's one scenario for sure. And you're right. I mean, certain human abilities, discernment, taste, empathy, knowing how to read a room, intuition, like these things become so much more important. The problem is for the last like 15 years in corporate America, especially, we have downplayed those. We're like, nobody cares, So
Yeah.
as the rise of data, as the rise of like raw science, we're like in science we trust. And so all these things we're like, whatever, who cares? Like, let's go with what the data. But now we're realizing that, okay, but there's, fine, you perfected data. Congratulations. You figure what's left. What's left is the qualitative. It's left that empathy, the storytelling, the creating interest, the creating an arc, all these things, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean so do
I
I
think the
humans are
importance of
necessary?
that, of that is it's even more important now with AI, right?
Absolutely. It's more important than it's ever been. It's just kind of weird that we're now having to take like a we're kind of having to back up and be like, oh yeah, those things that we said that weren't, yeah, it turns out they're actually quite important.
But okay, well, how about this? What if the entry level roles, if they come in with these AI skill sets, would that open the door for more opportunities for these entry level
Sure.
candidates?
But that is the bar. See,
That's the
that
bar.
is
Yeah,
the bar. So
yeah.
that's the difference. It's like the thing that we think is the extra eventually becomes the bar. Everything that we think is next level eventually becomes the bar.
So what do we do? Like y- you have a company, right? Are you telling everyone that they need to learn AI to keep their jobs or to be productive? Is this like something that's mandatory now? And
Yeah,
how do
this
you
is
start?
not only am I we telling them, we're giving them all the training, we're giving them all the tools, we're giving them all the freedom. In fact, 50% of my time right now is not within the company. It's actually doing trainings and working in keynotes and speaking and getting people on board because a lot of companies with their approach right now is let's hire Bain, let's hire McKinsey, let's hire one of these Accenture, Deloitte, let's hire one of these guys to come in and do AI transformation for us.
Hmm.
It doesn't work that way. And so
Why?
really, why does it not work this way? Because they're gonna come up the best AI optimization, the best use of AI for your company is going to come from within. It's going to come from empowering the people who already know your stuff, who
Yeah.
know their job, and how can they do their job a ton better. It's not going to come from someone outside saying, let me give you the free. Yet they can help you, right? But those projects inevitably end up in failure 18, 24 months down because they're like, ah, we've created this. Now everyone go follow it. So much of this has to start from the other way, which is you have to start with inspiration. You have to inspire people. And, some people like you and I, we're naturally excited by the stuff because we're like, great. There's a lot of other people that are scared by it. There's, these are both also completely natural, acceptable
Yes,
responses, but you have to get the people who are also scared and get them to the excited part. You have to
exactly.
get, and
Yes.
this also starts from leadership. So if the leadership doesn't get it, if your CEO is like, let's just get one of these guys and give them all the stuff to do, it's a losing proposition because eventually what's going to happen is they're not bought in. They don't see how their company could look dramatically different. Like they are themselves. So by the way, we also see a huge exodus of leaders who don't want to deal with this next wave because they're like, listen, man, I survived COVID. I got through social. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't even blame them because they're like, the amount
Yeah.
of technology I've had to learn in my one career is like 10x anything anyone before me had to learn. So they're like, I'm
Yeah.
out. Peace. For the
Yeah.
leaders that are really excited and they're like, wow, this. So it starts with inspiration. Then it starts with actually giving people the skills, right? So you inspire them, then you give them the training, you give them the ability to do these things, to have those eyes. Like, because that's where the best work is going to come. It's from your current developer that's already doing stuff and they get to 10x their productivity and find some cool ways to do things. It's going to come from people already within your organization and empowering them.
So,
And then that is how the next level is you have a transformational corporate company level change. Too many people are trying to do it the opposite, which is like, we're going to do this big change, now push all of this down through. And I just don't think that works. I think you have to kind
mm,
of work groundswell and you have to get the leaders excited.
yeah. And do you think that's because this is all new to everyone, right? Like nobody, I don't know if, I mean, there are experts or people who know it better, but I think we're all kind of learning this together and it's changing so fast. I got my hands on this. I started learning AI like in just within a month. The
Yeah.
amount of knowledge, the amount that I've learned is like, I'm not an expert level, but I feel comfortable enough to try it out and see what it can do for me, right? And I
Yeah.
think maybe that's how people learn, right? Just trial and error, progress over perfection.
Yes. In fact, one of the things I do when I do my keynotes is I get people to use it and see use cases in their personal lives. We're a lot easier to change things in our personal lives and try things,
Mm,
like we're less risk averse. Then when they feel comfortable, then it's like now you can use this for work because they're doing your work sometimes carries a lot of connotations about like losing my job or security or fear or scarcity. Like different mechanisms click in there. We're personal, right? We're a lot more lax, like I could use a tool to plan my trip, whatever. Like the risk ratio is different. So if you get people using it for personal, that's such a good gateway to get them into using it for work. And you have to
yeah.
understand the worst thing you can actually do is get someone who's been in AI for 15 years and say, okay, we're going to be have a chief AI officer. Unless you're doing like really big data stuff, you're selling this because I don't know, you don't really need that because the funny thing is the current version of AI that we use, which is a lot of transformers, right? LLMs. This traditionally was poo-pooed by most of the AI community. A very small subset of people are actually working on this. And everyone
Mm,
was like, you think the future of AI is a giant autocorrect? Like, what? No. And
yeah.
so what you often find is that the current AI that's succeeding and getting commercial success and consumers into it is actually the very thing that real, true, deep AI practitioners dislike. Like they don't, you're going to have someone who doesn't even like what's currently succeeding running so people who are very deep machine learning, AI, the technologists, they have a place and it's great, but a lot of them have looked with disdain on the current AI transformer space for a long time. But that's the space that's succeeding and that's the space that's taking off. Even me, like I was just like, wow, it's transformers in a really crude way, like giant autocorrects. But it turns out human beings are a ton more predictable than we think, right? And
Yeah.
so we like to think we're like so special and none of our what we do can be automated. And then when you see that 90% of what you do can be automated, that's a shift.
It is a shift. And I think you have to be even more adaptable now. Meaning, if your job right now, okay, let me just take a data role. Like if you're a data analyst, right now, if 80% of your time is creating reports, that's going to be like that. Yes, you still need people to do that work, but how much of that can you save that 80% of time using AI?
Yeah. And so these are the people that are really at risk, right? Because the moment the company is like, we can just use AI to create all these reports, all these guys are spending 80% time getting doing reports get like we don't need them. So you need to think a step ahead and be like, okay, what are all the things that I do that can be and you do
Yes.
it, right?
Yes.
You make yourself irrelevant because then what? It forces you to be strategic and say, okay, if 80% of my work is gone and I'm not in busy work, and that's hard. I think that's the other reason, Nisar, that so many people are it's hard to be like, okay, I'm free. What do I do now? Now I have to think strategically. Now I have to think
That's because
creatively. Now I have to
that's
think
because
about like
they've never been in that position before. They don't know what to do, right?
for
But
sure, but it's challenging to do second level thinking, right? So it's challenging to be like, okay, but where can I add value? Can I look at this and be like, hey, based on this, now that I have more time to sit back and someone else is doing the reporting, these are the product lines we should focus on. And like, can you use discernment? Can you bring that like, right? Can you turn it from data analysis to actually what does this mean for the business?
yes,
And so
I
people who
think it's
can
that
do that,
storytelling aspect, the storytelling. How do you tell that story now? How do you put it into context?
yeah. And
And
guess
that,
what? We thought storytelling was this like terrible
yes,
little skill. Like, no, you know what I mean? These are all the skills that we've kind of just blown past or not given
yes.
credence to. But these are the things that are going to be so incredibly important.
No, I agree. I agree. The storytelling, and that's very human skill, right?
Yeah.
Um, but here's the thing. You still need human oversight because AI does hallucinate. It does make mistakes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
So
you're
so
human
you
in the
can't
loop.
just it can't be 100% autonomous.
Not yet.
You think it will be
Yes.
no, there will be. Okay, I look at it in three phases. Okay, phase one, which I think we're in phase one, is you're using humans and generative AI. You're prompting, you're getting answers, and then using. Phase two is you're creating agents. Phase three is where they're fully autonomous and they're going to be working when you're not, and you're just managing these agents. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there's going to be a combination of things. So yes, I mean we are looking at an agentic world where we will have AI colleagues and human colleagues, and I yes, I believe that. Uh, I think AI is getting it smarter and better. So the level of hallucinating it does now is yes, very high, but I think that'll get better.
Yeah.
I think that the very like if you're really pushing it out, right, kind of if you really want minds blown on this, we are still training AI to reflect human values. Like, this is what I believe about the world. And here's where what happens when AI is freed from that and it can create its own context. Meaning,
Mm,
imagine if we still believed the world was flat and we
mm,
taught AI the world is flat.
mm, mm.
Eventually, AI does all this stuff, and it's like, I'm finding evidence that the world is not flat. The problem is a lot of us think right now we have all the info. We're so smart. But we don't know so much. So what happens when AI starts pushing back and saying, well, you believe this, but this is actually probabilistically more true.
So you're saying that they're going to fact check themselves?
Yeah, I think once the models are freed from and it's already happened. Listen, there has been science that has been refuted, but it has not been made public because people are not ready for that. Like, a lot of this stuff, especially in the US, is so politicized, right? Like,
Yeah.
science is politicized.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times, if we have been pushing something and all these papers and stuff start saying contrary, are we going to be able to be like, ah, yes, let me lean into this? And or are we going to be like, no, I've just spent the last 30 years making this. So it's very, I mean, again, the flat world, and you have to realize how many people died for the flat world theory, and
Mm.
people were put to death by the church for saying otherwise. Like there's it's not just about how humans want to be intelligent and grow. A lot of this is around how open are we to having our own worldview checked? And I think if you look around, you can see that that's most people are not open to it at all. We believe what we believe, and there's comfort in those beliefs. And so, yeah, what happens when AI starts pushing back on that stuff?
Yeah. This is the worst AI will be. It's only going to get better. And right
Yes,
now it's it's so
it's
productive, right?
incredibly good. Yes.
Yeah. Um, okay, what happens though with like how do we upskill? So I just took a certification course on AI prompting. I put out a post on LinkedIn with the following statement. This is my opinion, but I want to see if you agree with me. I think AI prompting will be a fundamental skill for analysts on the same scale as Excel or SQL is for analysts analytical roles right now. Do you agree?
Yes, I mean, I think there's just no way around it, right? Like, it's just like when social media came out and I was telling people, like, you need to embrace this. This will change how you communicate, how you do business. And they were just like, no, I think it's a fad. Okay, like the internet was a fad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that Blockbuster, right? When they when they rejected Netflix. And what happened?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and I think we will see a lot of those blockbusters in the near
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But okay, so when it comes to AI prompting, right? So I think right now we're so used to Google, and I think the way that we or many people prompt AI is the same way they ask questions in Google. I think that has to change. I think there's a skill set or a mind shift or a way that we work with AI that we need to prompt efficiently and effectively, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, context for AI is very important, right?
Yeah.
Because if it is a giant, again, crudely autocorrect, so to speak, and it's working on probabilities, if you tell it you are a data analyst, it's going to use a very different grouping of vocabulary and
Mhm.
semantics which matter than it will if you say you are a freelance journalist who is, covering like whatever. Cognitive science. It's going to pull from a different word cloud, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, I think these are very important things. And, and when I keynote and I speak, I teach people this. I'm like, here's how to think about it. And I just think so many people are missing the boat, sadly.
yeah, yeah. Um, so other than AI prompting, do you think like what else can like if you're just starting out and you don't know how to like upskill yourself in AI, what do you do? How do you learn?
You start by doing. And as I said, I think the easiest place to start is start by um, using it for personal, right?
Yeah.
So, like, really simple. If you have kids, have it come up with good bedtime stories. So, one of my favorite hacks is I tell it my kids name their age and I tell them what they're into. And then I say, you know, maybe today we had a hard time being nice to our sister. Tie that into a moral. Now I don't have to come up with a custom story, it just does it for me every night. And so, get comfortable with AI in your personal life because it's just so much easier, I think, to make the transition into work.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, okay, I saw you, I think you wrote something on LinkedIn about Apple.
Yes.
Okay. And so they just had their WWDC, right? And they did not have very much not a lot of AI content there, right? And there were
Yes.
a lot of critics, but you had a different perspective on it, right? You looked at it as like they were marketing themselves, and and you took a different spin on it, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think what they're doing, you know, very directly is they're training us, right? So liquid glass is not exciting, whatever. In fact, it's actually a worse UX experience than like a clean white sheet of paper where I see things. But they're trying to get us comfortable because I think our future is not these screens, it's overlay on our physical environment. But you need a step in front of that before you get to that because most people, it's too jarring. It's like, no, no, no. I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden I see like, like in the movies that you see like data and you see like and you're just
Yeah.
like for most people that's jarring, that's not our experience, like there's physical reality and digital. To have those overlay on each other is something that will require training our minds to accept. That's what Apple is doing. Once it gets us comfortable with this liquid glass, you can put it anywhere. You can have it with a little device in the back, that you wear like a little ear cuff and it has that. You could do it with glasses. But right now, that gap is too big. So I think that's what they recognized. I think their researchers went back to them and said, this is not a technology thing. This is a getting humans comfortable thing.
Hmm.
Like, here's a great story. When elevators first came out,
Yeah.
they were not being used. Like they were safe, and people were just like, no, we're like people are too scared. They're scared of the elevators. And so one of the things they did was they said, well, what if we put a person in the elevator? We'll just make it their job that they are the elevator operator. They're not doing jack. They're just hitting the buttons, but it
Yeah.
gave people comfort that if this guy can ride this elevator all day long, there is a human there. And that is actually the bridge between how elevators started, why we don't, but that's a whole, we had to get people comfortable. So I think this is very similar. They're using that same let's use the elevator man operator to do that to get people comfortable and then they will take that away. So yeah, I think it's a stepping stone.
And that's interesting, and that's one side of things. But then what people were also saying was Apple is downplaying the importance of AI right now. They're like when you look at AI compared to Apple or sorry to Google or Microsoft, they're not at the same level with their AI development, right?
Yeah. look, I think they're downplaying it because they're not winning in that race right
Right,
now,
right.
right? And so they're looking at where can they win, which historically Apple has hardware. And so that's why I think this liquid glass and all of that, these are not big sexy wins, but their next thing will be. And then in retrospect, this will make a lot more sense to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great way to look at it. And I was like, most people were saying we're just focusing on the AI space, and then you, like you said, you thought outside the box there, and I didn't think of it that way. But you have a point. It's a great way to see it. But listen, I loved having you on. I do want to end off with some rapid fire questions if you're open to it.
Sure, go for it.
All right. What's one word you'd use to describe the future of work?
Changing.
Changing. Okay. What's the first job you ever had?
Oh gosh. First job or first business? Because
First job.
I've never really had a job. I guess the closest thing would be I was a private tutor for students with learning disabilities.
In school while you were in school?
Well, I was in college, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. What's your go-to app for staying productive?
Go-to app for, I mean, for talking about like, of course, like Claude, ChatGPT. These are I have a whole workflow.
Yeah. Is there one that you prefer over the others?
Uh, I prefer ChatGPT for its reasoning. I prefer Claude for the writing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I find ChatGPT is very more much it's very conversational. I haven't used Claude as much. Is it a similar type of experience?
It it feels more human than ChatGPT. Let's
Oh,
put it that way.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, great. Um, what's more exciting to you right now? And we talked about both of these things, but what are you more excited about? Gen AI or human creativity?
Human creativity amplified by Gen AI.
Yeah, that
Unlocked.
so it's a combination of both then, right?
Yeah, because what happens when the low-hanging fruit is gone, right? Like, okay, AI can do a lot of this stuff. So now you really have to force yourself to be creative.
All right. And I'll end off with this one. You get to keep one of the three. Chat GPT, your
Okay.
calendar, or your caffeine.
Oh, ChatGPT, because I'm sure I can come up with an alternative for caffeine. I can manage my calendar. That's easy. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate the time you took, and this has been a great session. I think this is something that, if especially for people who are really new into the AI space, this is something that I think will be at least a good introduction, and hopefully will also make them excited and not scared about AI.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I think the world, for better or for worse, will belong to the people who are going to be like the pioneers who settled physical lands, but now we're just doing it on the digital landscape.
I think this is right now is that time frame. This is your opportunity to really
Sure.
really get in there
Yeah.
in the early stage, right? Thank you so much, Emma.
Pleasure being here.